Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. And before we get rolling, major announcement from Tennessee. They want you to know that they need help with their NIL deals. So if you want, you can pay. They're increasing their ticket price as part of a talent fee to help them attract new talent on the field so that they might be able to win an SEC championship for the first time in like 40 years or however long it's been. You can help them out. You can be part of their NIL. By choice? Maybe. You like wearing neon safety orange? You can go sit there, watch them lose a few games every year that they're not supposed to. People remember when they were like, oh, Michigan and Ohio State, that's not like a good rivalry. But Tennessee considers Bama their rival. I don't even remember the last time they beat them. Right? Was Manning, I guess T. Martin was the QB?
Could have been.
But it's funny because I've said before, like we're seeing a lot of 90s teams that were good win the championship. Braves, Avs, Michigan. So Tennessee was one of those teams that they had won it, I think, the year after Michigan did in the 90s. So could this be Tennessee's year? They crushed NC State. They have a big game coming up, though. And their schedule, with the SEC unbalanced schedules, though, some teams are going to get the free ride, just like the Big Ten. And that's what I'm like wondering, how fair is it going to be, and how many teams are going to have a team that gets to the championship, and if they get absolutely slaughtered, do they just not get out? Because Tennessee's going to play at Oklahoma. That'll be like a real test. Then they only have Bama at home and at Georgia. They only have 3 ranked games. So someone said, like, oh, what if they lose all 3 and they're sitting at 9-3? Like, they could get into the playoffs depending on how those other teams end up. If they beat Oklahoma, there's a great chance that they're just in the playoffs as long as they don't screw up. You could lose to Bama and lose to Georgia. If they both end up in the top 5, then your schedule's like, it's almost like a Michigan schedule where Michigan has, well, right now USC's ranked. So depending on how this USC game goes, and Oregon hadn't been looking good, they looked like they got better. But in theory, Michigan, if they could pull off a win, I know the offense doesn't look good, you win the 2 games and then you lose to like Texas and Ohio State, and they're both like top teams, you're pretty much going to be in the playoff. And so Tennessee just happened to have both Georgia and Bama on the same schedule, but there's a chance for like, what if Georgia rolls off? I don't know. I don't think they have protected rivals, or if they do, it might be Bama. I don't know. But their schedule, like, they're not going to play Ole Miss. They're not going to play Missouri, which are 2 of the other top teams in that conference. You're not going to play Texas. So if they pull off one upset and beat, this Oklahoma game is huge. They beat Oklahoma, then you pull off one upset, you're in the SEC championship game. I don't think 2 teams are going to be undefeated this year. So at one loss, you're going to probably be in the SEC championship game. I was kind of feeling the same way about the Big Ten. Like, oh, Penn State, like, they're going to really go through. And then they struggle with, like, Bowling Green. And then it's like, maybe they just don't look good. Right? So maybe they're not going to get undefeated through. And Oregon hadn't looked good until they crushed Oregon State. So, like, I don't know if we're going to see. I think we might have, like, a random, oh, yeah, there's a bunch of 3-loss teams that are right there in the mix. How do you pick who's in? Like, it's going to be crazy. Because Notre Dame, they crushed Purdue. Right? We were laughing at them last week. The Purdue game means nothing. Like, honestly, Purdue, to me, you killed them. Great. You still lost to Northern Illinois. People have been voting for Northern Illinois in the polls. And I'm thinking, I don't think Northern Illinois is going to be, they're probably going to finish like 8-4 or something, if that. They didn't really look like a great team. Notre Dame just didn't look good. So killing Purdue doesn't change my mind. No one thinks, well, Purdue is a hell of a team, right? They don't have Braum there anymore as their coach. They have Ryan Waters. He's been awful. He was one of the ones that was really adamant and spoke out against Michigan's sign stealing last year. So that shows you how great of a head coach he is. Not good. So to me, that game means nothing. Unless Purdue got a new coach, but I'm pretty sure he's the one that's still there. So they're pretty much a joke right now. But Tennessee reminds me of Nebraska right now. They have a couple games that if they can get through, you're looking at possibly a conference championship appearance that in the past couple years just wouldn't have happened. Wouldn't have happened because they would have been stuck behind whatever team. Just because they dodge like Texas or whatever. Now Texas or Georgia could both end up with one loss, and then the head-to-head could eliminate them. But again, it doesn't matter if you back into the playoffs. And that's where I think college is going to, like the talent fee, if Tennessee doesn't start winning, how many people are going to be happy just paying a talent fee? Right? Because at some point you're going to say, what is my talent getting me? If some school like Texas is winning all the championships then with the NIL, your talent fee isn't going to do anything to you. But Texas hasn't won either. They've been filling their roster up, blew it last year. This year, they've looked good so far. But who knows how it'll be. Quinn Ewers got hurt. They put in Manning. That's a big deal. I still think Ewers is one of the best QBs, if not the best QB in college. He makes plays. He's smart. I don't know why they don't rate him higher. Like, he was one of the top recruits. If it was anybody else, I feel like everyone would be talking about how he's the greatest. Instead, they're like throwing USC's new quarterback in like the top list. They still have Sanders in like the top list. I watched Sanders threw a pick six to Nebraska that was insane the other week, where he just stared his guy down and threw it right to him. I've never seen Quinn Ewers do that. Probably, maybe someone has a highlight of him doing something like that. But every game he's been fairly competitive, and he's able to make plays. And he's smart. Like, it just seems like, and I'm not saying that some of the other quarterbacks aren't, but when you have all of it together, go for it. Was it because he had a mullet at one point? He cleaned that up too. He wised up. Got away from Ohio, cut his mullet. I felt bad seeing him get hurt. Not that I want Texas to win the championship, but who knows? I don't even know if I'm impressed by Manning. Right?
Well, I mean, there's stuff that it seems like he was doing that was very unmanning-like.
Him like running, you mean? That's the one play that stood out to me because I thought, oh my gosh, he's running. But then they were playing UTSA, and I thought, that's nothing impressive, right? And their schedule, talk about this new big SEC, their schedule is even weaker than Tennessee's, to be honest. They play Oklahoma, Georgia, and A&M. That's why I have them penciled in. They don't play Bama. Georgia's a team that I think is like, if you're looking at someone, Georgia could end up 9-3. They didn't look good. They should have lost to Kentucky. I don't know what Kentucky's coach was doing. Like, he can't win a big game. I think it's still Stoops. It's like, buddy, what are you trying to do? You could have crushed him at home. And Kentucky had already got killed the week before, so that's why Texas jumped them. Like, anyone watching that game, they couldn't say anything about, well, Georgia was looking past them for Bama or anything. It's like, Kentucky's not even good. Now they're going to go to Bama. Like, watch Georgia just get crushed. I mean, I'm sure the game will be closer, but it's not like Georgia hasn't really beaten Bama. That's the one thing that with Kirby Smart, all his success, he hasn't done is beat Bama. Like, they beat him one time, I think, right? Once or twice. Like, that's it. It's very, like, they haven't gone on a run like where Harbaugh was beating Ohio State 3 years in a row. Kirby Smart doesn't have that against Bama. They were losing to him in the SEC championship game. They were losing to him in the SEC championship game. They beat him in the playoff after one of their receivers got hurt, right? Bama? After they had already lost to him. That's the only time that I remember them beating him. So, okay, lucky. Now you got to play them again. You could start off, and then their end of the year. Like I'm still not high. Nothing against Lane Kiffin, but like they're gonna play Ole Miss and then like Tennessee. I'm not sold on either of those teams being top notch, but I guess we'll see. We're starting to get into some conference games soon. I think Georgia has a bye week though, so yeah, we have a week between that Bama matchup. Gotta
Well,
like
that's
help
the
them set
safest
up.
place in the world to be, on the highway when Georgia's playing football.
Now they both have a bye week. Looking at this, embarrassing. I guess. Well, Bama went and killed Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's program is kind of just like, what are you doing? You hire Luke Fickell. Why? He's changing you to an air raid. Why? You're Wisconsin. You've done one thing good for like 20 years in a row, and that's been a heavy run pro team, which Michigan just showed you can win a championship with. And Wisconsin said, you know what? Nope. We're going to pretend we're like, I don't even know who they're trying to be. Like a weird pro spread type deal. Like it doesn't make any sense because they don't have the talent for it. It's a weird thing. Like I think Wisconsin, they're going to regret that hire so much. Like Luke Fickell doing something like that at Michigan or somewhere would have made a lot more sense. Or heck, even if he would have went to like a Notre Dame or something. But at Wisconsin, they don't have a lot of that. They don't get a lot of the top end talent that you need to compete. I guess, I mean, you can win games with the spread, but like when you're playing Alabama, you're just going to get killed. I mean, we've seen it with even like Mike Leach sometimes. Whenever he'd play his like Mississippi State and stuff, I thought that was a bad move for him. Because you're going to be under-talented. You have to be pretty much spot on, accurate, running that type of offense whenever you're less talented. And if you're not eating clock, your defense is going to get tired real fast. And so he was on the losing end of a couple beatdowns because of that. That's why I was kind of sad. I know he wasn't beating Washington at Washington State. But if he would have stayed at a school kind of like that or Texas Tech where you're not facing that many teams more talented than you every year. Like in the Big 12, he only had Oklahoma and Texas really. In the Pac-12, who? USC and Oregon maybe? Like Washington maybe a little bit more talented, but it's not like they couldn't beat them, right? If they wanted to. They just beat them this year. That's why Luke Fickell, I think, is going to be one of the worst hires in recent times. Not as bad as like a Scott Frost where he really bombed, but I think they're entering like a mediocre, hey, the Big Ten just got better. Welcome to the middle. If that. But maybe I'll be wrong. I don't know. They haven't been lighting up even bad teams like South Dakota and Michigan. Like they're just not Western Michigan. I mean, there's not scoring. So then they got to go to USC playing a similar style of offense with better athletes. That's just going to be brutal for them. So I think those are pretty much my college updates. I really don't have a lot. We'll see how long the show goes this week. Michigan facing a quarterback change. I was kind of coming in last week. I didn't really have much after the Texas game. I wasn't sure how much it was on Davis Moore and how much was on coaching. I'm still not 100% sold. I think at one point Davis Moore had like three incompletions and they were all interceptions. Not what you want to see. But Michigan's line, they're still rotating linemen that just don't make sense. And if you hire a head coach that his thing is offensive line and offense, and the offense looks this bad, it doesn't give you confidence for the future. It would be like, hey, we just brought in this defensive coach to be our head coach, and you're giving up 60 points a game. And you're like, whoa, what the hell? And then they're like, yeah, but he's really great. He's a great guy. Because the other thing that they'd say is they're like, Sherrone Moore's going to do great. He's a player's coach. Anytime someone tells me the coach is a player's coach, I immediately think that this is going to be a bad hire. Right? It's like anytime they're like, yeah, he's a player's coach, or he's going to do things like the exact same as like what they've been. And that's why I said the best case scenario is someone like David Shaw that could keep it going for a while, but then it's gonna fall off. You can blame whatever you want, but you can't follow like a legend. That's why like DeBoer, he built teams. Sherrone Moore, this is his first head coaching job. He hasn't done anything. So DeBoer coming in at Alabama following Nick Saban, I think is a much better landing spot than someone coming in following like Jim Harbaugh that hadn't been recruiting because he was flirting with the NFL every couple of years. They said that Michigan couldn't get a quarterback through the portal because Harbaugh wasn't going to look when JJ might come back and he might come back. Then they both left. So you could blame a little bit of it on Harbaugh, but you can't blame the offense looking this bad on anything but Sherrone Moore at this point. Like, I don't care what you say. Like, we're going to make a bunch of excuses. You're the head coach. What were you doing at spring game? Michigan's offense at spring game looked a lot better. They're running power read with Orgy, and then they did run the pro with Warren, which is what they kind of went with. But I thought the offense looked much better with Orgy running power, and he was throwing the ball in spring game, and he actually looked pretty good. The defense couldn't cheat. He kept it pretty much 50-50, if I remember correctly, opening up big holes because the defense had to spread out in case he rolled out. He was doing a lot of rolling out, running, and throwing. If he really can't throw at all, then why is he still playing quarterback? That's the only thing I don't understand. Maybe this is kind of like the ruse, because the Texas game to me, if I'm being honest, that game meant nothing. If we had lost the national championship to them, then maybe the rematch would have been a little bit more like, oh, we got to beat these guys. And if we would have got killed again, then maybe it would have felt a little bit worse. But Michigan's the national champs. Texas is not in conference. I don't give two shits about that loss. I pretty much had that written down as most likely a loss just because of the style. But now the USC game this Saturday, Michigan has to win. I'm not worried too much. A lot of people are like worried about Wisconsin. They just lost to Washington. I mean, they just lost to Washington State. Oregon hasn't really looked too good against lesser opponents. So if Michigan wants to make the playoffs, got to beat USC, got to beat Washington. Potentially, you got to beat either Oregon or Ohio State, or at least stay close enough that at 9-3. You hope that chaos happens and you can get in. But they're not going to put you in if the offense looks this bad and you're an offensive head coach. That's the only thing I'm going to say about it. I don't understand why people are bashing the quarterbacks. The entire purpose of the offensive coach is to have the quarterback ready to play. They're making it seem like these guys haven't been in the system for 3 years now or whatever. I think Warren's a senior. And Orgy's junior. Sherrone Moore was the old offensive coordinator. He had to have known what he had. And if you don't tailor the system to the new quarterback, what are you doing? That's my take on it.
But I think that's one of the mistakes that a young coach will make, is that you just think, this is my system and I've developed it over so long, and you don't actually have the tools to modify it to the team that you have. You say, well, these plays should be great versus every type of defense or every type of scenario that I'm facing. And if you have that type of mindset, it's really hard to break, where you're like, I'm running into this type of scenario where I should use a different approach. It's just like, nope. Regardless of my quarterback, this is going to be what we're teaching, and they should make it fit. And if they don't, then that'll just be a separate issue.
So there were a couple other young coach mistakes where Loveland got hurt, our best offensive weapon, and then they put him back out. I think it was after halftime for another try, and he got hurt worse. And I think at that point, it's like, shut him down. This game's over. Like, Michigan was sitting on a 28-3 lead or whatever. Like, why are you having him out here? That's a poor coaching mistake to even let him test it because you don't need him at this point. Like, whatever you're doing, don't do it. And then he's very loyal to Donovan Edwards, which I'm a fan of. But Mullings has been the much better running back. I think he was even voted, like the Pro Football Focus has him as the most highly rated running back this past weekend. So if anyone comes out with Orgy, it should be Mullings and Orgy. And he named him the head quarterback already, the starting quarterback. Why? Harbaugh never would have done that. Harbaugh would have said, we're evaluating it and we're making the decision game time. Right? Because now USC is going to go for, like, they're going to be ready for Orgy and that run. I mean, you don't have to be ready for just a guy that runs it up the middle every time. Right? They haven't done anything creative. I think Orgy's been quarterback for like 10 snaps. Someone said like 8 of them were just runs up the middle and 2 of them were the same exact pass plays that went for touchdowns. Which, yeah, they went for touchdowns, but oh, no, there was another pass play in there, so it might have been one more pass play, the one where he turfed it into the ground going into the game last week. And then he got a little bit more. They threw deep. He had a deep throw that he overthrew the guy. And it's like he should have been, if you're going to have an experiment, you have to do it like Milroe last year. Remember, he started off really bad, and then they kind of just stuck with him after they struggled with South Florida and they lost to Texas. That's what Michigan should have did. If they're going to make the switch, make it last week. Have Orgy play the entire game and just throw the ball and see what happens, right? Eventually, it took Milroe a couple games to kind of ease up, build up into it until he got confident at the end of the year. That's where, like, that's what I was hoping to see from Orgy. Like, yo, if you're going to go this route, go this route. But the only thing that I did like is once Michigan got the comfortable lead, they didn't just keep the starters in. Harbaugh had a thing where near the end, I guess because he knew his team was like awesome, he kept the starters in for a very long time. Like even last year, he could have let Orgy run a couple series like late in some games that we were killing teams, right? But he never did. It was weird. Like Michigan State, like he just has the starters out there running the ball and squatting on the lead. He wouldn't have like Blake running the ball up, but he'd have like a backup. But he'd keep JJ out there. And so in some regard, that kind of hurt. But I liked how Sharon Moore, he pulled the defense and had like the backup defense, even though they gave up 2 touchdowns late in the game to make it seem like the game was closer. But I would rather have the young defense get torched like that because then it gives them something to work on and it helps build the depth. But we'll see going forward. I'm really not too sold on any Big Ten team right now. I don't know what the Big Ten has really until they really start playing each other. I don't think the only big time matchup really, USC beat LSU, right? Michigan lost to Texas. Penn State beat like West Virginia, but then Pitt beat West Virginia. So was that matchup even good? West Virginia's like 1-2. They have to be regretting their decisions, right?
Well, the crazy thing to me is the backyard brawl, because Pitt 2 weeks in a row now has been in a spot where it's like they're down 2 scores late in the game, and you're thinking, there's no way they're winning this.
I know, I didn't think they were either.
And then they do.
But see, they seem to be well coached, right? Like, I don't mind Narduzzi as a coach. I just think sometimes, I don't know if it's them being too conservative, right? Like, it just seems like they kind of wait and then till it's like late in the game. And then they're like, all right, we got to stop playing around. And that's not going to last all year. Like, they're going to lose some heartbreakers, I feel like. Although they could win out. Who knows? Like, he's won the ACC. That's the craziest thing to me is, for all the hype Miami's been getting for 20 years, or however long they've been in the ACC, Narduzzi has an ACC championship and they don't. That's the craziest stat anyone could tell you. Like, who do you think has more? If you go to a random fan and you say, who do you think has more ACC champs? Miami or Pitt? People are going to say, like, automatically, oh, Miami, because they think of the Big East times. And it's like, no, you're wrong.
Oh, how wrong you
The
are.
Pat signal. It's up. It's going. People were giving me a hard time for defending Narduzzi this past weekend. I'm like, how can you hate a guy that wins the ACC and stays at Pitt and has been building something? And he gets great players. Like, he's been putting guys into the pros. Even guys like Addison. Like, he finds guys underneath whatever recruiting, develops them enough that they're transferring to big time schools. Right?
Yeah.
His driving record, you'd think Georgia would have offered, but I don't know. I don't know how to read Pitt. I don't know how to read the ACC though. Right? Boston College has a chance to win. They kind of blow it against Missouri. I was really hoping they pulled that one off. I was at the NC State game. It was confusing to me because the wind was so bad. I feel like I got wind burnt. I was like kind of in the lower bowl section near the top, and the wind was kind of just coming off the field. It almost felt like someone was blowing just AC directly into your face for the entire game. It was very annoying. And I never experienced anything like that. I guess maybe in other stadiums, I think I've been to NC State Stadium a bunch of times, and I never had that happen to me. And it's like the weirdest experience. Like, I've been at Pitt in like almost the exact same seats in Pittsburgh Stadium, and I never had that. You would think the water coming off the river or whatever would kind of create that effect. But we have been having crazy, like, I don't know if it's like a hurricane or something, but we've been having crazy rains down here for the past couple days. So the NC State game just happened to be in the break. But they came out looking like flat. They had a transfer quarterback come in that hasn't lived up to the hype. They said he's out with an undisclosed injury. And now they've been playing the freshman, and he came in and won them the game. They're down 11. Bring the freshman in. He made some mistakes, but he was able to get the win. And I just feel like the transfer got passed up. Injury or not, I don't think you can go back. That's what I think Michigan's at right now with Warren, too. Same, like, I know he's not a transfer. You named him the starter. You gave him the chance. You can't have him come in and throw 3 interceptions that were pretty bad. Like, you just can't do it. And then you name the next guy the starter. NC State did the same exact thing. You name the guy the starter. You have to play him because otherwise you're going to lose him and a lot of the locker room that kind of rallied behind him, right? Like, oh, yeah, this is our dude. We've been hoping that he'd be the QB. NC State, I think, is just a freshman, though. That's what baffles me. Michigan has a guy that's been there for years, been developed by Jim Harbaugh as the successor. Can't throw it all. NC State just has some random other freshman quarterback come in, leading them to a win. You can't tell me that Michigan can't have a guy on the roster that can do the same exact thing. NC State could not have gotten a better freshman than what Michigan's freshman is. I think Michigan's freshman is from North Carolina too, which is ironic. And he said, like, oh, no, I definitely want a red shirt. It's like, if they need you, buddy, you need to play. Otherwise, like, if you're going to red shirt, you might never play. Like, that's what I would be if I'm the guy that's on the bench and they're like, wow, our offense looks kind of bad. And if we lose to USC, we might have to try something drastic. Like, let's play the freshman, right? NC State is doing the same exact thing. Got killed by Tennessee. You're in ACC, like, you're playing whatever team they play, Louisiana Tech. You're playing them. You're losing by 11. You have to make the change. And now that you made it, you're hoping that it sparks your team. And people, well, I guess they don't have to forget about the Tennessee blowout as long as they win the ACC. Go for it. Let's see how. I wonder how many teams are going to kind of do that, because you can bring in transfers. You're not going to be able to give them playing time all the time. You're just not going to be able to do it. Eventually, you're going to have to make the switch. Did Florida State end up switching out QBs?
No, they have not, and I think that's one of the big points of contention right now. Is that how much of a struggle does DJ have to have before they pull the plug? And I get part of it is it's almost like what you see in the NFL, where there's guys that I signed this player to this big contract, so we're going to get our money's worth out of him. But I feel like at the same time, if your quarterback isn't doing what he needs to do to win you some games, how long do you ride the lame horse?
That's why I brought up the NC State one. Like, they brought in a transfer, Same thing. They brought him in because he was a winner, thought he was going to do his stuff, right?
And I really like Grayson McCall too.
Yeah. So he comes in, they have to make the change. You can't be losing by 11 to Louisiana Tech and have your quarterback missing a ton of throws. He just hasn't looked comfortable. It's almost like, I don't know. I don't think the game's like too fast for him, right? Because he's had success. Where was he? At Coastal Carolina?
Yeah.
So it just seemed off at NC State. I don't know if it's like he got here, thought the offense, they were going to be tailored to him, and it was more of like we talked about earlier, like, oh, this is the offensive system. This is what we're running. You're stuck in it. And he just hasn't been able to learn it fast enough. But then again, if you bring in a freshman, what do you do? How can he pick it up faster? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, but I think it's interesting that you bring that up because I just saw a thing from your boy Tom Brady today that was talking about how part of the college game now is kind of taking a back seat because there's no time to develop players. And they said like he went from when he started at Michigan, he was like 7th string and had to work his way into being the starter and was developed every year in that offense to where then when he went to New England, he didn't have to step in right away. He was able to develop in New England with the coaching staff. And then when he had his opportunity, was prepared to step in. Whereas a lot of quarterbacks now, when they're getting into the league, they're just thrown right into the mix. And so they're not actually being developed as much as they're just saying, well, we know we only have a short period of time. And I think you see that in particular with some of those teams that are perennial losers, where they're just, we know if it's the next quarterback, we're just going to keep drafting quarterbacks until we get our franchise. And I don't think that it just seems like all they do is they just ruin potentially good quarterbacks in the process as a result.
Well, that's why I think like USC getting their quarterback hyped up, Miller Moss. He's a junior now. I think he stayed there. They bring in like Caleb Williams and like, no, we're not going to play you, buddy. He could have transferred. Like some teams would have taken him. But even like last year, he ended up with 7 touchdowns, like as the backup. Did Caleb Williams get hurt a little bit? I can't remember like how much they actually played him. But coming in, even this year, he's hyped up. Yeah, you played some early games. You beat up on LSU. It's not like LSU has looked like a great team either. They haven't been putting teams away. Struggled at South Carolina, right? So LSU might just not be good. We don't know how good USC is. He's only thrown 2 touchdowns. That's what people are hyping him up more than Quinn Ewers, and nothing against him. It's just insane to me. Like, you see the body of work. Quinn Ewers led Texas to the playoffs for the first time. It's not like Texas is loaded, right? They lose a lot of their key players like Xavier Worthy, and then now that he looks like he's even better and he gets hurt, it's unfortunate. Maybe Manning will take advantage of that and lead Texas to like a championship, which would be the most craziest thing. If Manning wins them a national championship off the back of Quinn Ewers getting hurt early in the year, could you imagine all the media all over Manning? They'd put him as like the number 1 pick, dude.
But I think it's funny because like as a collective family, they didn't allow Eli to be drafted by San Diego. Like, do you really think that they would let Arch get drafted by Carolina?
That's what I was going to say. Carolina, they're the quarterback ruiners. They, speaking of teams naming new quarterbacks, they named Andy Dalton a QB. But Bryce Young, I can't remember what I thought going back. Like, did I think he was a good draft pick for them? He was small. I remember that. I guess I really didn't have too many thoughts on him. He looked like he was good. I mean, C.J. Stroud, like, all credit to him. I always kind of just wrote off Ohio State quarterbacks as being, like, system QB guys. But he's made some strides. And it seems like he's, like, the best young quarterback. They tried to do a comparison of him against Caleb Williams. And they were like, look how good these guys both are. And I'm like, Caleb Williams hasn't done anything. He played like crap that first game. Like, what are you talking about? Like, these 2 guys, and then they had a thing about like Bryce Young being good too, and I was like, are you drunk writing this out, writing this script? Like, is this a parody? The only one that is good is Stroud right now. And maybe he's just Stroud, like, good because they gave Stroud a ton of weapons, right? Nico Collins is awesome. That's Michigan bias aside. He's like unstoppable. He's gigantic. They can't cover him, right? He's like getting into fights out there and winning. Like they gave a penalty on him. He's laughing. He scored a touchdown on the next play and ran the guy over. Like how many guys are doing that these days? I think they threw back like a throwback to Andre Johnson. Like not that many guys are that physical. AJ Brown maybe, right? He's injured. But you have that. Then not only do they have him, they give him Diggs, right? And then they give him Mixon. Meanwhile, Bryce Young has who? They brought in Thielen, that's it. They had DJ Moore, he's with the Bears now. Like, who's a running back? Hubbard? Like Panthers, man, I feel bad. Like, you had to know, like, they're so bad that it's like a joke down here. Everyone that's a Panthers fan, I just kind of feel bad for. Like, talking to me, I'm like, you have to know they have no hope.
Well, and I think that, like, with the Bryce Young, like, analysis, the thing that was hard is how do you look at his production or his evaluation without a little bit of bias, because he everything that he's doing throughout his career is with like a stacked 5-star offensive line, a 5-star receiving core, 5-star running backs all around him. It's like he has all of this talent around him. That is it the system or is it the player? And I think it's hard. Like it's hard to be fair to him because you look at it, it's like, well, in all honesty, you have a great system around you. What are you doing on your own to make plays happen?
That's what I've been saying against Ohio State quarterbacks same time. They have how many wide receivers drafted in the first round every year? Like at least one. So like how are you going to tell me that, oh, this Ohio State guy, he's going to be the guy? Right? At some point you have to say system QB. That's what I've been saying. Stroud looks like the only one, and that's why I'm putting the comparison out there. He has weapons now. He had weapons last year. Him and Nico developed pretty much a good rapport going down the season. That's why I ended up getting Nico in fantasy. Because I knew even if they bring in Diggs isn't the same type of receiver. They have Diggs like playing slot or whatever. I don't even know what they're doing with him. I watched one of the analysis game, the guys, maybe it was Gruden. Was it the thing you sent me? Where he talked about singling up Nico?
Yeah.
And then I saw another analysis from like one of the other NFL guys. And they were saying like, oh no, Gruden was wrong on this. They should single up Diggs. And I thought, no, they shouldn't. No, they shouldn't, because Nico is way better. Like just in terms of like the size, and if you get single, like Gruden's right. I think Gruden would know, not random NFL dudes, right? Of course, the NFL they can hype up Diggs because he's like a household name now from years at the Bills, but Nico in single coverage, like they showed last night, if him and Stroud, like if Stroud's in trouble, that's a big time guy you can throw to. And he's going to make the catch. And having Diggs just underneath as like a secondary option, as long as Diggs doesn't start to like throw a fit or whatever, if he can go into that Godwin role, because like I think they're kind of similar to what the Bucs had with Brady. Nico can be like their Mike Evans, right? As long as he's not dropping the ball. He can be the guy that's scoring touchdowns, running deep, whatever. Diggs can fill that Godwin role, right? The guy that's just... he's clutch. You need some catches. He can make them. He's not afraid of getting in traffic, right? He can go deep, kind of stretch it out. And then with Mixon, he's better than anything the Bucs had at running back. He can catch a ball. He called them out about the hip tackle or whatever. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, he said he got hurt. He got hobbled up on one of the hip drop tackles that are supposed to be illegal now. And he tweeted about it like, yo, you guys told me that it's all about player safety, but you didn't even throw a flag. And then he said that the ref came over to him and said, it wasn't really the type of tackle we're looking for. Like in the game. As he's hurt. He's like, "Oh yeah, I know you just pulled me down from behind. You guys said you were going to get rid of that all for show." And I kind of feel bad for him because you get out of what, Cincinnati? Cincinnati has not looked good. Although Mahomes looked so bad on Sunday that it was hard to watch. I watched Mahomes because I think like, oh, here's a guy that's going to make like great plays, and he did not look good.
Well, I think the irony in that is that it's like another game where when you look at what he's doing, the officials wait until after a play is done and then like, nope, here's a flag. Let's give him another chance. Like,
oh, that pass interference, dude?
Yes.
Oh, that was insane. They were like, oh, you can't do this. He went for the ball. If the guy goes for the ball because Mahomes made a bad throw, that should not have been a flag, right? Hit him in the helmet. I think that was the bad thing, right? He didn't have his hands together, which he's a DB. He probably didn't know that the guy had stopped there, right? Because you're watching the ball and you're thinking, oh my God, I can win this game. I can win this game. And the other guy jumps too, and you hit him and your hands stay apart, and then the ball hits you in the helmet. And then a lot of DBs probably, they're used to keeping their hands like to try to knock the ball down. But if you'd have kept his hands together, and I think if his hands would have hit the ball, I don't think they would have threw the flag. Honestly, I don't think they would have. And the fact that it came out late was just kind of like, oh, you knew that's coming. And then they win anyway. And I think he's kind of reinforcing just bad play from him. But that team, they've been giving up a lot of points. They have been struggling to kind of score. Their running back's hurt. Right, Pachinko? I think he's on IR. I had McCaffrey on IR and Tua, which I'll talk about here in a second. Those are my last two topics. But Pachinko's hurt. They're playing that other guy. They're ready for a bid war in fantasy. Who's going to pick up the next chief running backs? But at this point, it's like, are they even going to be able to fill that production? He seems like he's staring down Kelsey and throwing into like double coverage. And some of the balls to Kelsey were just like at his feet. Like he wasn't even giving him a chance. It was weird. And Taylor Swift's hugging some other guy in the booth. I'm like, who is that guy? Just some random guy? It just seems like a dysfunctional organization at this point. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out though, right?
Yeah.
I think they play is it the Chargers week 4? My boy Harbaugh, dude, coming to the Steelers this week. Steelers have not looked good either. They're kind of like your fantasy team. Maybe because you have so many Steelers on your fantasy team this year, that it's like they're not playing anybody, but they're winning. And you're like, is it gonna stick? Will things start to come together?
No, I'm not. I'll be honest. I'm looking at this purely from the standpoint of I know that this is not a sustainable model. I know it's not. So I'm not even giving myself the opportunity to get my hopes up that this is something that it's not. I feel like they have pieces in place. And I think what this Steelers team is going to remind you of is like when we went from that Cowher, Roethlisberger end of era to the beginning of Tomlin, where it was still like Ben just running around and they just field goal teams to death, and you're like, what are we doing? And like, but they sustained that model for so long that then you're just like, yeah, we're just going to kick 15 field goals and the other team's going to throw 6 interceptions and we're going to win. And like, that's going to be their model. Like, I feel like that's what they're going to go back to and have as their blueprint. It'll be like just Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, don't throw an interception, and J.J. Watt will get 6 sacks, and they'll force them into 3rd and 15 where they throw an interception, and we'll win the game.
Remember when Rick was on the show and he hated Boswell? He's perfect on the year, bro. He's like the leading scorer. for the year, like already probably. Right? Will they score more touchdowns? Yes. I don't know. Probably not.
Probably not.
So he's going to be the leading scorer year round. He hasn't missed a field goal. So like we have the Steelers. To me, it's almost like a joke. Didn't they give Russell Wilson like the game ball? It's like, hey Russ, thanks for cheering us on over here. How are we passing the ball well? Yeah, we are. 273 yards. A game? No, that's for both games. Just wrapping him up here. It's like, normally teams throw like 200 yards a game. It's like, yeah, we know. We're as surprised as you are. We're 2-0. Like their stats read like it's a one game, right? Like if I said, hey, Fields threw for 273 and Najee Harris had 139, you're like, oh, Steelers won like 35 to like whatever, 28. Like, no, that's 2 games, guys. 139 yards rushing. Like, what are you doing? You're getting 60 yards a game rushing? It's honestly, it's like driving me nuts that the offense can't be sustainable. And now we're going to get a good look at Harbaugh because Harbaugh has the Colts 2-0 for the first time in like 12 years or since 2012 or something like that. Unbelievable turnaround. I know they haven't really played anybody. They played the Panthers and the Raiders, but they're giving up like some of the lowest points in the league, if not the lowest. Steelers are giving up 16, and I think the Chargers are giving up, 13? So imagine what the score is going to be this week. 9-6. It could just be 16-13. I don't know how you go for 2 twice. Like, I don't kick a couple field goals, like go for 2. I don't know how you get to 16. But that could be the final score. Right? And I wouldn't be surprised. Because, like, what do you expect? The Steelers aren't going to put up points. Now, the Colts, on the other hand, so if you compare the defensive scores, the Chargers have 48 points on the year. The Steelers only have 31. So the Chargers have a much better, higher point differential. I still think it's going to be a low-scoring game. And it's at Pittsburgh. I just think that we're going to see the Chargers go on a run. And all the narrative from last year about Harbaugh being just like a poor coach and needed like sign stealing to win, those guys are just going to look like buffoons. How are you taking a Chargers team that got gutted? You lost like Eckler, and like then they have no receivers too. That's the thing that like the Steelers are like, yeah, we have no weapons. It's like either do the Chargers. I don't even know who they're playing at wide receiver. I think their leading receiver is still available in fantasy. I'm not even joking. I was looking at it. Quentin Johnson, yeah, he has like they have the same type of stats from the year as the Steelers. 274 passing for the year for Herbert. But Dobbins has 266 yards rushing. He randomly revived Dobbins' career. Because wasn't he with the Ravens? Got hurt, was kind of just like lost. Comes in, Harbaugh saves him. And now you're looking at a Chargers team that's going to win a game against the Steelers like 15-12 or something. And people are going to say, like, this is Steelers football. Although, who knows? Maybe Fields will come out slinging it and the Steelers will score a bunch of points to beat him. I'm waiting for that to happen. Fields comes out. Did you see him in, like, his outfit after the game?
No.
He looked like a grandpa. Like, it was like, if you would have been like, hey, my grandpa has dementia. He is cool, so I put him on this, like, mink coat we had laying around. Like, that's kind of like the vibe I got from him. Well, he wasn't wearing, like, a mink coat, but that's kind of like how he looked. Like, just beaten down and lost and confused after the game. And I thought, that's not what you want your quarterback to look like. Especially after a win, right? You should be, like, excited. Maybe because they gave the game ball to Russ. I don't even know if they gave him this one or the one before, but I'm like, whatever. Let's see. Last thing I had, Christian McCaffrey, a little bit under fire. Could it have been from our show, Matt? Because I called him out that he could be faking. In parallel, ESPN ran a story about how people were calling out what was the Bengals receiver, Higgins or someone? They called out one of their guys randomly for faking injuries, and I thought this is very suspicious because I haven't seen anyone talking about that guy faking injuries, right? But I have seen people talk about McCaffrey for a couple of years now, faking injuries, including myself, because it's very noticeable, right? He came out and said after the show last week, so some of this might be old news if you're following the McCaffrey drama. He came out and said, "Oh, I could have played," because they were like, "Give us a little bit more on your injury. Like, what's actually wrong with you? Like that you couldn't." I don't think he was on the list, right? Normally, you have to put people on the list to give everyone a heads up, and that's why I think it screwed a lot of fantasy owners and gamblers because out of nowhere, McCaffrey just doesn't play the first game because of calf tightness, he said, or whatever. And then he said, "Oh, no, I could have played. It was just tightness." And then I think the NFL started to look into it because people are complaining. And this is not just in football. It started in the NBA. People have been complaining about players just randomly sitting. You pay hundreds of dollars for a ticket. I think they've specifically called out LeBron and some other guys where people are buying a ticket to go watch LeBron play. Randomly, he just is a healthy scratch, like not really injured, not going to play. And now people want refunds because they're paying for an experience to see someone. And I thought that I saw, and I haven't looked into this before the show, I kind of forgot. But I thought I saw some groups are putting together like class action lawsuits. Because like, could you imagine if you had a group, like what kind of groups go, like a church group, like school group, and you're like, hey, LeBron's going to come, we're going to go see LeBron. And you get a whole group organized, rent a bus and everything, go to the game and he's not playing. Like, remember when we went, I think you were with me, maybe it was, I don't even know what it was for, like church or something. We saw Tony Gwynn's last game, dude. He hit that home run. And then he came out and gave like a standing O. Like that, I remember that vividly, right? Seeing it was like his farewell tour, one of his last games, or at least maybe his last game in Pittsburgh. He hits a home run. And I was like, damn, Tony Gwynn, he's awesome. Doesn't look like he's not working out hard. He's just not in shape. He played for a long time. He was like every man's dream. There's no equivalent of Tony Gwynn in football, right? Maybe like Roethlisberger or Jay Cutler, like a guy that looks like he's just hanging out. But Tony Gwynn was there. Like that's what I remember vividly. So people are getting upset with all these high ticket prices. We talked about Tennessee adding talent fees on top, and now with the NFL. There's a lot of gambling stuff and a lot of fantasy and a lot of daily fantasy. And if you're getting stuck because you're in a big time fantasy league and McCaffrey's playing Monday night and he's getting called off late and you can't pick somebody else up because the waiver wire was Sunday, you're screwed. And I joked about it when we did our live draft that whoever has McCaffrey on their team has to pick his backup up. Has to. You have to waste a roster spot on his backup the entire year. Why? Because you don't know if he's going to play. So then, when they got called out, then they came out after this, like hours apart. He said that he wasn't hurt. Then he was saying, "Oh no, I misspoke. It's actually like a strain. I might have to be out for a while."
Then he realized, "Oh crap! I could be getting my team in trouble because in the NFL you have to declare injuries."
Yeah. So then he's like, "Oh no, it's a really bad strain," and then. And I think part of it because his backup did pretty well. They randomly were like, "Oh no, it's way worse. Like it was a late injury. We couldn't really do anything about it." They released like so many statements last week. By Friday, he's being put on the IR. I think Friday they made the decision, or I don't know when they put him on. But it escalated so fast from, "Hey, I'm not really injured," to "Holy crap, now we have a problem," and you can't even tell me it's a coincidence that the 49ers go out and lose to the Vikings with Sam Darnold. In no world at the beginning of the year, if I said, hey, Matt, Sam Darnold is going to be the Vikings QB, JJ's hurt. They're going to play the Niners week 2. How much you want to bet on the Vikings? You would say $0. There's $0 I'm betting on that game. And the fact that the Vikes are 2-0 is insane because they beat the Niners. I don't think it's going to last. But the Niners now are kind of in trouble. Debo got hurt. McCaffrey's injury thing went through the roof, went nuclear now. So now he's out for what, 4 weeks mandatory? Insane. And then Tua. Slide. Remember we talked about him doing all that weird yoga stuff, like stretching his neck out so that it's like more flexible and his brain will be like jello, like the fruit jello you put like a banana in or whatever. Then you shake it's in there. Like I kind of like that jello. It's like an old grandma type jello. That's what Tua was trying to make his head like. And the entire time I'm thinking, why don't he just go to baseball practice like Kyler Murray and practice sliding? I watch Kyler Murray run around and he's like constantly in good positions to like slide or not get hit. And before I was thinking like Murray's going to be hurt like all the time. But then I'm wondering, maybe that's the key. The smaller quarterbacks that run around like Russell Wilson, even though he doesn't run as much as like Kyler Murray, they're baseball guys. Right?
Yeah.
In baseball, you have to be in a position, especially like if you're playing outfield or whatever, like if you're playing baseball, you have to be in a position at any time to have to get low and slide and pop right back up and throw the ball. Slide, throw from like weird angles. And it can't be a coincidence that guys that are small that play baseball have seemingly stuck around longer than some other guys. And Tua is one that you can tell he's never really, he doesn't keep his, I don't want to say he doesn't keep his balance, but he's kind of like always in a weird position, right? Where I feel like with baseball, it's repetition after repetition. Like, all right, now we're going to practice balls that are hit a little bit behind you. So you're reaching back, like you're low, you're kind of throwing from your back hip pocket. You're doing like some other shuffle type stuff. And I think like I'm really watching Kyler Murray, you can see that he's able to kind of always keep his balance and he's able to kind of slide down and avoid big time hits because I think he's kind of melding his baseball experience with that type of football experience, right? You play outfield, you're always making sliding catches or whatever. You have to kind of put yourself in a position and you're running the bases sliding, which you're avoiding the tag, very similar to avoiding a tackle. Instead of a mitt, you're avoiding someone spearing you. Take that experience. Like if I was Tua, that's what I would have been focused on. Because instead, he's off balance. He's kind of like Steve Young, man. And I love Steve Young. There weren't that many left-handed quarterbacks growing up, right? So Steve Young out there, like you see him take bad hits, and you will go back and watch, and it's like, oh, come on, brother. Like, what are you doing? That's what I felt like with Tua. I honestly thought this was a career ender. I don't know how his family continues to like. I know he just got all that money, and it's probably not all guaranteed or whatever. I don't know what happens. He gets another concussion. Is it guaranteed? If I was him, I wouldn't come back.
Well, and I honestly thought, like, there were some, like, parody accounts on X and stuff that was saying, oh, yeah, this is definitely the one that's going to make me retire. And I thought, there legitimately could be something to that.
Honestly, remember when Steve Young got hit, was Aeneas Williams? And then we're like, he's done. The doctor said, like, you can't, you're going to be permanently damaged. Tua coming back and doing everything he did to only get another concussion because he was in a poor, like, he kind of got hit. I just understand, like, why he just didn't try to slide. And to me, that's so ingrained in him. There's no way. It's too late. You're too many concussions in. Like, the time for him to do the baseball stuff, 2 concussions ago. Like 2 years ago. This is like 3 or 4 years in a row, right? That we could be close to watching him just die on the field. Which would be the worst thing for football ever. Like the NFL needs to come together and say, like, look, we got to blackball him. Right? The worst PR is going to be watching Tua get paralyzed or worse on TV. And I love football. But some guys, like, they're just they're snake bitten, injury prone. I just don't know what to do, but I really don't want to see him get permanently disabled on TV. And to me, that was such a routine play and tackle that it's just like, you got to give it up. And I hate ending the show on like a weird, sour note. So, do you have anything for the final bell? It's like, oh yeah, we're having Tua's funeral on the show after McCaffrey's faking it. So Tua just call McCaffrey and say like, hey, what do I got to do to like, stretch this out my career? Like, calf injuries, faking it. There's like the one Panthers one where I still remember vividly, he took like a sweep to the left and just like skipped out of bounds. And then he's like, I'm done for the day. And I thought, what a jerk. What a jerk, McCaffrey. And then in that News Lowe's commercial, it looks like he's wearing a toupee. Like, did he go bald? Did you see that? I don't know if you get the same commercials as me. I forget what game I was watching. It's like him and Kelsey, I'm pretty sure. But McCaffrey's hair, he was like always like a blonde. It's like a darker, it like almost looks like he has a toupee on. And I thought, how is he okay with this? And I've seen two versions of it. So I'm thinking one was an older version, right? Of like, how like they do like the same, like with that same guy with Mahomes does like the same Allstate commercials every year. And they used to be Aaron Rodgers. It seems like Lowe's has like a McCaffrey thing where I saw the old version where he looked younger with like blonder hair. And then it was almost back to back, like they must have made a mistake and played the new one. He popped out with the toupee. And I was like, whoa. And it's way more, it's so more visual when you see him back to back. It's like so noticeable that you're like, dude, is he wearing a rug now? How is he okay with that? It was almost like the comb forward, like I don't even know what to say, like a bald man would do.
Like he's looking like an alpaca.
Yeah, but it was thick though. Like it looked like a rug. I like that's the only thing I remember from watching whatever game that was, Sunday night maybe. And it was just like, oh my gosh, embarrassing. But anything you want to talk about, final bell? I know I just got into a random McCaffrey thing again.
No, I think that's it.
How's it been a good football year? Florida State's been down. Michigan looks like crap. Steelers, like, how are you supposed to talk about the Steelers? Jordan Love, I didn't even talk about the Packers. Malik Willis, man, how's he even win a game? I went and got the Colts defense. What a waste of my time. Because I thought Malik Willis can't come in with no experience and learn the Packers offense in 1 week. Nope, fake news. He did. And he got the win. It's like insane. And they were like, oh, Jordan Love, we're going to try to rush him back. And I'm like, no. Let him heal and just, I don't know, power run with Malik Willis, whatever you want to do. But that's my final thoughts. If there's anything you want us to hit on, let me know. I have a bad feeling that next week's going to be a sad show. Michigan will probably lose. Steelers will probably lose. And the Packers will probably lose. And then it'll just be a depression week. We haven't really had a depression week, right, for a while. A full-on depression week.
We are due.
I know. Like someone said, Michigan hadn't lost a home game in like years. I'm like, I know. It's been awesome. It has been awesome until the Texas won. And then the Steelers are undefeated somehow. So we'll see what happens. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.